the Tristen Law Show. If it's your first time here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. I'm Tristen Law, semi-retired pro wrestler, and today, I'm your host. Ladies and gentlemen, today is not just another episode of the Tristen Law Show. Today is special. Today, I am 40 years old today, right now. And I wanted to have a special episode to where I can not only celebrate me, but I don't want to celebrate me. That sounds like really cocky, right? But I want to have an event to where I can celebrate 40 years of pro wrestling and look back at 40 years of pro wrestling, how pro wrestling has shaped not only me, but you, and look back at me in pro wrestling in 40 years. So much has happened in the last 40 years. Thank you so much for joining me today on this very special birthday stream for me. Didn't want to do it, just want to hang out and relax today. But you know what, if I'm going to relax with anybody, if I'm going to hang out with anybody, why not hang out with the people that congregate around me, the people that I like? You know, we got Fernando in here. We got Heel Vega in here already talking about happy birthday. They're wishing each other good afternoon. This is the community that I'm building. I do apologize, though. I did say I was going to be here at 11 a.m. And in my mind, I had 12. I already got set up, you know, for later on in the afternoon for the things I'm going to be doing to celebrate my birthday. But then again, it was like, wait a minute, am I supposed to go live at 11 or 12? Oh, crap! At 11:35, I realized that it was 12. It was 11, so I set it for 12. But we are here. When I came into this world in 1985, August 30, 1985, something also special came into the world in 1985. No, it wasn't Back to the Future, but that is one of my most favorite movies ever. If you don't know anything about me, I'm teaching you about me. This is why I like doing episodes like this. I tell other podcasts, it's about making yourself feel human, letting your audience know who you are. But WrestleMania came out that year. And that very first WrestleMania happened the same year I was born. And for the last 40 years, wrestling and I have grown up together. I was talking to my friend Dave from Dave Knows Wrestling here on YouTube. And he was like, but bro, how are you the same age as WrestleMania? And WrestleMania was in 85. The years are off. I go, no, it's not off. It's just how they count WrestleMania, right? When you are born, you're not automatically one. You are one year from the time that you were born. So WrestleMania, what they did, they counted WrestleMania 1 as one. So by the time I was 1 year old, they were already on WrestleMania 2. But I didn't just grow up watching wrestling. Wrestling grew up with me. Think about that. For me, growing up in the 90s, you know, don't get it wrong, I was not watching wrestling at 3 years old. But in the 90s, watching wrestling, for me, I've seen parts of Hulkamania. I lived the whole entire Attitude Era. I saw Cena's rise to prominence, dominance. I saw the birth of AEW. I was there when TNA was hot. I was there. I was watching the match today, this morning, thinking about me in 40 years of pro wrestling, that I was at Victory Road 2005 for TNA when Elix Skipper did the walk on top of the stage and did the Hurricanrana. You see me standing there right next to one of my friends that I worked with, Ed. Ed is in a green shirt, and you see me there. And then they just jumped off the ring, and I always watch wrestling like this. Ask my friend Lewis, who went with me to SummerSlam. I'm very observant. This is before I got into the ring to learn how to wrestle. And I just watch wrestling. But watching the Hurricanrana off the top, and then watching the triple super bomb, death bomb plex off the top rope, those are the things that make me sit in front of you here today. So here's my question for you. What is your favorite wrestling moment from the last 40 years? Whether you were alive then or you've only been alive for 20 years on this planet. I want to know in the last 40 years, from 1985 until today, drop it in the chat. What has been your most favorite moment? Because we're taking a ride through the decades. This is 40 years of pro wrestling and Tristen Law. Looking at the chat, Fernando says that Back to the Future was dope. Bro, it is my favorite movie. Working at Universal Orlando, one of the most favorite things for me was being able to go on the Back to the Future ride. I loved the movie so much that when I was wrestling, I wanted to make everything Back to the Future theme, but I thought it would have been so corny, but other people beat me to it, and they did it after me. Should have followed my gut. Let's see. Heel Vega said, a really good friend of mine is also celebrating a birthday today. Really cool guy. We went to SummerSlam together. Well, shout out to him. But the only special birthday today is me. All right? I'm the heel today. Fernando says, Hogan versus Piper on MTV was my very first wrestling match I've seen. Heel Vega said, wait, you're the guy in the white tee in the barricade, that blurry shot, but it looks like a younger version of you. Because there was no HD, you can't really tell that was me. But I swear, there's a scene when they're going around, everybody's like TNA, TNA, towards the end parts, towards the last half of the match. You can see me. I am there, I promise you. TNA is part of the reason to why I am here today. It is the reason why I am here today. Fernando, Heel Vega, how old are you guys? So when you guys are talking about the 40 years in wrestling, so I can know where you guys stand. Maybe you guys are older than 40. I don't know. Let me know in the chat. 1985 in pro wrestling, it was WrestleMania 1. It was Hulkamania, and the territories were still alive in the 80s. I always say this. I've made episodes about Hulk Hogan when he was alive, criticizing when he was alive, and I made an episode in his passing explaining why some people boo him in the death and some people still cheer him in the death, right? We're not going into that, but one of the things that I always say is that without Hulkamania, there is no WrestleMania. Vince McMahon put his whole life savings on the back of Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, Mr. T, Miss Cyndi Lauper, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, all of those people. When Fernando is talking about what did Fernando, Hogan versus Piper on MTV, the first wrestling match, that he's talking about the rock and wrestling era. That is the reason why pro wrestling became mainstream. I'm getting goosebumps already talking about pro wrestling, and we're only like 8-7 minutes into this whole entire thing. Listen, if it wasn't for Vince McMahon taking a gamble and making pro wrestling mainstream, there'd be no reason for us to talk about pro wrestling today. There'd be no Hulkamania, there'd be no Fu Manchu, there would probably be no Rock or John Cena, right? All of those things. If you go back into the past and you wipe out WrestleMania, pro wrestling today, it still might be around, but it'll be a whole totally lot different. When I'm sitting around and I'm looking at the last some odd years of pro wrestling, this is what I see. That's the 80s right there. That's Hulk Hogan. That's Hulkamania. You know, like I look back at old wrestling, I'm like, I don't ever remember Hulk Hogan having here. I don't know. Maybe Hulk Hogan never had here. I don't know. But WrestleMania 1 and 2 gave Vince McMahon enough money to encroach upon the territories and make pro wrestling a global phenomenon. Pro wrestling used to be so split up, right? In the Northeast, you got the WWF. In the South, you might have Jim Crockett. You know, in Canada, you might have Maple Leaf on one side. But Vince McMahon said, no, I want all that. Vince McMahon saw pro wrestling as a real life game of risk. You know, the game of world domination. Vince McMahon saw pro wrestling as a game of Monopoly. He wanted Park Place. He wanted Boardwalk. He wanted every square inch of pro wrestling. That is what he wanted. And he went against the grain. He's the guy that decided to do something different. And because he did something different, we've got 40 years of pro wrestling to look back on. When you look at things like WrestleMania 1 and you look at WrestleMania 41, it's two different spectacles. Even looking at WrestleMania 3. WrestleMania 3 was the first WrestleMania in a football stadium. If you look at the spectacle of WrestleMania and WrestleMania 3 compared to now, it's night and day. Two different things. I would not want to pay to sit in a nosebleed seat in that stadium at the time because you're looking at this little small screen. Technology was different. Now, in these stadiums, I went to go watch SummerSlam a couple weeks ago. In MetLife Stadium, they got the screens everywhere. If you can't see the ring because we had an obstructed view, just turn your head and look at the screen. It's different. The spectacles, the glam, the glitz, all of that. Fernando talking about his first memory him being 47 years old was Rowdy Piper and Hogan on MTV. One of my first memories of pro wrestling was, and I said this before, and if you don't know, this is where you get to learn about me a little bit today. One of my first memories of pro wrestling is walking in the room and seeing my grandfather watching WWE. Growing up in New York City, we got superstars. And seeing him watch superstars and going there into his room in Brooklyn, right? Probably 4 or 5 years old, maybe almost 5, maybe almost, I don't know. And I go in there and I watch him watching the wrestling. I'm just standing there by the room. And in my mind, the way I play the story back in my mind, I start taking small steps into the room because I'm like, what is that? My mother was not a fan of pro wrestling. My mother even told me that my grandmother used to watch pro wrestling. She used to watch Saturday Night's Main Event and all those other stuff. And what my mother used to do is that when my grandmother was going to come home to watch wrestling, she'd make sure that she was on the TV so that my grandmother couldn't watch it. That's what my mother told me, her words. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she gonna call me and said, boy, why you got to tell the story? Well, it's a story. It's a part of how I got here today. My mother's not a pro wrestling fan. I got my mother so close to being a pro wrestling fan because, you know, in case you don't know, we are from Jamaica. Jamaica's the island that we represent.
Yeah!
And Kofi Kingston, I remember her watching wrestling with me in like 2010 and coming in and go, oh, this is one of my Jamaican boys. And I knew that Kofi Kingston wasn't a real Jamaican because of the way that he talked. It's one of those things that Jamaicans hate, is that we hate when somebody's pretending to be Jamaican, especially on TV. If I watch something and I see, like, I can't watch Cool Runnings. You know the reason why I can't watch Cool Runnings? Because ain't none of them Jamaican in there, okay? So I said, I know he's not Jamaican, but I was like, you know, maybe he won't talk. And that's the day that he talked. And my mother goes, but wait a minute, he's not Jamaican. And my mother walked out the room, never liked wrestling again. But I can say this, though. I am my mother's favorite pro wrestler. I know that for a fact. My mother's been to maybe 2 or 3 pro wrestling events in her life, and I was the wrestler on the card. Let's see what we got in the chat. I love when Heel Vega and Fernando's here. I wish Universal was here as well, too. We got a core set of people that come to the Tristen Law Show. And this is why you got to watch the show live. I give you the opportunity to be a part of the show here, and I do things like the promo hotline. You can call and talk about anything, praise anything, 973-826-0101. I'll leave you to be a part of the show. But I love when Heel Vega's here, when Fernando and a bunch of other people are here in the chat live, because what they do is they have their own separate show while they're watching. If you want to participate in the chat, the best way for you to do it is on your phone, maybe your computer. Maybe you can have 2 screens up. If you want to watch on the TV, watch on the TV. But maybe you could watch on the television, on your phone, and turn the volume down so it doesn't conflict, and you can interact live. But I give you the opportunity to participate after the show. 973-826-0101. Complain about anything, praise anything, pro wrestling. And I'm waiting for that one fire comment, that one fire hot take that I can play on the air. I'm waiting. People call, but you guys don't say anything interesting. Say something interesting. Cut a promo. Tell me how you feel. You know what? You want to say happy birthday? Call me on the promo hotline. I might even play it for you live today. If it's a happy birthday, because I can read the transcript of the message that you leave, if you call and say happy birthday, I'll play it live on the air today. No cussing. I'm the only one that gets to cuss here, okay?
Thank you.
Looking at the chat, which is what made me go, okay. Okay, so Heel Vega said that he's 32. Fernando is 47, so I'm like in between. Fernando says that he's a wrestling fan because of Hulk Hogan, but Stone Cold is my favorite wrestler of all time. Listen to me, Fernando. Thank you for your comment. Fernando, I got in so much trouble because of people like Stone Cold Steve Austin. I used to always, I'm not going to lie, people used to make fun of me. There was a picture that I wanted to put up, and I just thought about it. It was a picture of me, you know, as a teenager. I was skinny. I was lanky, and I loved pro wrestling. I was always tall. Even as a 40-year-old man, now I can say I got long arms, I got long legs, and I was just always like, I guess, weird, right? But I always knew who I was and always stayed true to me. And people used to make fun of me, and I used to always watch Monday Night Raw, and I used to always say, I wish I had the courage to go in there and cut promos like Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I would go in there, and I would recite Stone Cold Steve Austin. As corny as it sounds, I would recite Stone Cold Steve Austin. I almost told the kid that if he keeps talking, I'm going to pick him up and drop him on his neck like a stack of dimes. Something Stone Cold Steve Austin said. I once told a kid, you know what? If you keep bothering me, I'm going to walk across the room and I'm going to stomp a mud hole in you and walk it dry. They laughed. They laughed. Sometimes they left me alone. Let's see, back to the chat. Heel Vegas says, lucky for Vince, that worked out for him. That leg drop carried WWF, later WWE for decades, and Austin 316 had been carrying since 97. The first match he ever watched was Austin versus Hart at WrestleMania 13. Talk about a stroke of luck to witness as a newbie. It's all about being in the right place at the right time. You're in the right place at the right time, and you get to experience something as amazing as that. I remember having the free cable, and I think I came along the year after, but seeing that, I think that was the year we got cable in the Bronx in 1996. If that shakes my memory properly, the WrestleMania, I think that was WrestleMania 12. If I'm not, that was WrestleMania 96. That was in Anaheim. Okay, so I remember watching the WrestleMania after that and seeing all the clips of Austin bleeding and everything else like that. And it's just like, this is not the wrestling that I remember growing up with. Because I remember watching wrestling in the new generation era with Hogan and stuff like that, but we fell out of it, right? Because wrestling started going on cable. And I remember having cable in the Bronx. We didn't have cable. The building was brand new. Cable was new to the neighborhood. And when they ran cable to the building, the first two things that I wanted to watch was Nickelodeon and wrestling. And that was on that same night I watched Monday Night Raw, and ever since then, I think I've been hooked. I've had a relationship to where I've fallen in and out of love with pro wrestling. And seeing that Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret Hart as a young kid, heel Vega, I know that's something 100% that's got you hooked. Fernando says, that's an amazing match to watch for a first time, heel Vega. My favorite match of all time that I love to watch is 3 Stages of Hell, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Triple H. Favorite match. If I was introducing you to pro wrestling, that is the match that I would show you because of the storytelling. Because another match I would show you is John Cena and Triple H when they went to Saudi Arabia. It might have been the first time they went to Saudi Arabia. That might have been in, 2017, 2018? Golly, I got to give those two guys a hand clap. They jerked the curtain that night. They opened the show. A hell of a match they put on. Heel Vega says, young Tristen with promo infringement. Look, man, I had to do what I had to do to save my life as a kid, man. You know, growing up as a kid in New York City, you know, Steve Urkel was very popular at the time, and I wore glasses. I had the brown glasses, and I kept losing them, so I had to wear them on a string. And, you know, fade high tops were kind of cool back then, so people would always make fun of me. And I always had thick frames. I'm blind. If you ever see me walking around in the street without no glasses and I don't have a dog or a stick, you need to call the cops, because something is probably wrong. But the thing about wrestling is that what I'm going to say is a lot of people can relate to it. In my happiest times in life and my saddest times in life, pro wrestling has always been there for me. Always. Every time I need to escape, I could always watch pro wrestling. And I really hope that what I'm doing here creates a community that it helps you escape your life or whatever it is that you're doing just for a couple moments, right? Because sometimes we need that extra escape. You know what? Maybe I'm creating a community to where somebody here can make a friend and they can, you know, be best friends and talk about wrestling on the side outside of the Tristen Law Show. I don't know. But when I came into the world, WrestleMania did too. And maybe that was fate. Maybe I was supposed to be born in 1985, right? I'm not like my brother that was born in 87 or my other brother that was born in 1990 or my sister that was born in like the 2000s, right? I am my mother's old. I talked to my mother today on the phone and my mother said, happy birthday. You know, I told my mother, congratulations to you because you raised the kid to 40 years old. When you look at the 90s in that era of pro wrestling itself, I think that era of pro wrestling there was when I think everything there was starting to change for me a lot, right? People like Macho Man they had about 20 years on their life of wrestling. You had Hogan, who was wrestling for a while. You had the Ultimate Warrior, but you had the new generation that crossed over to the Attitude Era. Let me tell you something. The new generation introduced me, but the Attitude Era raised me. Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, the Excellent of Execution, Bret the Hitman Hart. I needed Stone Cold Steve Austin. I needed The Rock. I needed Shawn Michaels. And I needed Bret Hart. The reason why I needed The Rock had that charisma to go out there and just say what he needed to say. Stone Cold Steve Austin was that ass-kicking, beer-drinking machine. Granted, I wasn't drinking beers at that time, but I would definitely take 2 cans of soda. I would kiss them together, and I would pour them all over myself. My mother would say, "Stop wasting the soda, boy. Soda's expensive." But at that time, during the Attitude Era, let me know your favorite Attitude Era moment in the chat. I'll tell you mine. At that moment, during the Attitude Era, the world, when you looked at mainstream was in the 90s to like 95, it was on a ramp, right? And then once you got from 95 all the way up to 1999, 2000, mainstream was on a rocket headed way past the moon. It was aggressive. And the way that it shaped the culture, you had grunge music, right? You had, without grunge music, maybe there'd be no emo music. But that's what I'm talking about. Like rock music changed. Pro wrestling changed. TV, I never forget watching TV and hearing them say words like B, like the B word. What? I'm watching regular television and somebody called somebody a B and that was okay. And I'm looking over at my grandfather like, yo, you're like, we good with this? Because y'all tell me not to say, but they can say it. I don't know. The Monday Night Wars, I remember being a 12, 13-year-old boy, 13, 14-year-old boy, switching back and forth like a madman because all I wanted to see was what Stone Cold Steve Austin was going to say. And I remember the time of watching WCW Nitro, when Nitro would start at 8 o'clock because Raw would start at 9. You'd get the whole entire NWO in the ring, and all they were doing was just cutting one big promo. Yo, all it was like, yo, pass the mic, pass the mic, pass the mic. That's what it was. And Raw, the second that Raw started, it was a car crash. It was a car crash from the beginning. When I go back and I watch Attitude Era Monday Night Raws, it was so exciting from start to finish. And I'm like, I lived that. It's a time that my son, when he grows up and wants to watch wrestling, I'm going to have to show him that and explain it to him because he didn't live it. There has been no time like the Attitude Era. There has been no time like the 90s as it pertains to mainstream. We're not going back there. I was one of the people a year ago that was saying, oh, when WWE goes to Netflix, it's going to be like the Attitude Era. No. I was wrong. I am wrong. We are not going back to the Attitude Era. The world has changed. The world has evolved well past then. We now got AI. We now got calculators and computers in our pockets. You are probably watching me on your lunch break and you're not watching me on your television. Let's go to the chat. Fernando says, my very first wrestling show was WrestleMania 13 in Chicago, Rosemont Horizon. And the connection is that was Heel Vega's first WrestleMania, right? If I'm not mistaken, right? That was the one with Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Fernando says his very first match he saw live was Taz versus Sabu in ECW. I remember staying up late at night watching Public Access. Let me tell you something. As a kid growing up in the 90s, I had no business watching Public Access. Public Access was pretty much like YouTube. Public Access was pretty much like YouTube, except you watch it on cable. It was like on the far end of the cable. Maybe channel 66, whatever it was that cable channels went up to at the time. it was always public access at the end. And I remember staying up late at night just to watch ECW. During that Attitude Era time, I was so hooked to pro wrestling that I watched everything. I watched AAA, I watched CMLL, I watched WCW, I watched WWF, I watched ECW, I watched WWF Super Astros. That was their version of Superstars that used to come on Noticias 41 Telemundo. You know, that's what I watched. I watched wrestling in different languages, not even knowing what they were talking about. My first wrestling show that I ever saw live was the Sunday before I went to wrestling school. It was No Way. It might have been No Way Out or Extreme Rules. It was Extreme Rules in Jacksonville, Florida, and I think the main event was John Cena versus the Great Khali. The first one I ever saw. And then I went to pro wrestling school. I think it was maybe the Monday or the Tuesday. No, it was the Tuesday. And that's when my life was changed. We're going to talk about me getting into pro wrestling school and how pro wrestling even shaped me a little bit. Let's see. Fernando says, Heel Vegas says, Fernando, maybe you were on the screen when I was watching Austin pass out to the sharpshooter. Fernando says, WrestleMania 13 was his first live wrestling show. Heel Vega, that was an amazing event. Heel Vegas says, I got to witness the Attitude Era, but the ruthless aggression raised me. You see, that's how there's somebody out there saying that the PG era raised them. I got them introduced, but the Triple H Paul Levesque era is the one that's raising them right now. Fernando says that I bought a lot of blank tapes recording Raw while I watched Nitro. Bro, you don't understand. My mother came into the room one night. Listen to what I'm telling you. You guys want to know what it was like for me growing up in the 80s and in the 90s, doing the Attitude Era, watching wrestling? Listen to what I'm about to tell you. My mother came into the room one night just to say goodnight. And you know what she saw? You would not believe what my mother saw. My mother saw Goldust slapping Marlena on TV. And my mother said, oh, hell no. My sons are not watching anything to where any woman gets hit in this house. No. My mother said that I was not allowed to watch pro wrestling anymore. My mother told me to turn off the TV. So my mother was always a person that goes to bed early. That's just what she does. She goes to bed early. And what I used to do, just like Fernando, was I would find video cassettes. And what I would do is with the video cassettes, I would record like MTV and BET and stuff like that. And I would just come back and just watch the music videos. But then I would also record late at night. I know nobody would touch it. I would never have to worry about anybody touching it. And all I would do is I would put the VHS in and I would hit record. And when my mother told me that I couldn't watch it, no problem. And when she went to work and I would come home from school, I would watch the wrestling. It gets even crazier than that. I was addicted to it in the 90s. My mother, what I would do is I would turn the TV on. I would close the room door. My mother was only one room over. So if anything stirred in that room, my mother would have heard it. So I would turn the TV down real low, and my ear would be to the TV listening, and my ear was facing the door. So when I heard my mother's room door open, what I would do is I would cut the TV off and go in bed and pretend to sleep. My mother would be looking. I don't think my mother was dumb. My mother knew what was going on, but she just never caught me. For me, it was so bad for me in pro wrestling that WWE, I apologize. I apologize for what I'm going to tell you. WWE, what I did was I used to get the WWF magazine and I would just write a name. I would write John Smith and I would mail in the card with my address, apartment number and everything. And I would get free issues of WWE magazine, WWF magazine, Raw magazine, WCW magazine it worked with. And I'm using quotation marks and free because it wasn't free. I was stealing. And stealing is wrong. But what I would do is that when the third issue would come, they would start wanting their money. So I would take the card out of there, and what I would do is I would just request for another magazine under somebody else's name. Not a problem, but my mother found it and said, how are you paying for these? Who is this person? I go, and I was so proud to tell my mother my bright idea. I said, oh, that's me, and that's how I got the magazines. My mother would go into the mailbox, she would find them, and she would throw them away. Not because she hated wrestling, because my mother always said she hated two things. My mother hates a liar and she hates a thief. Let's go to the chat. Fernando says that his favorite Attitude Era moment was DX invading Nitro and the Austin 316 promo. Fernando, thank you so much for your comment. I was towards the end. When I just started watching wrestling, when we got cable, Stone Cold was like on his rise. I think the Austin 316 promo might have happened already, but I remember watching the whole thing with DX invading WWE. I thought, oh my God, what is happening? The 90s weren't just an era, though. I think 100% that it was attitude. If you didn't yell Austin 316 in school, if you didn't tell anybody to suck it in school, were you even alive during the 90s? If you didn't call somebody a Rudy Poo candy ass in the 90s, dude, were you even a wrestling fan? Because what people like John Cena, people like Logan Paul, all those people, the people that we're watching today, their whole entire legacy is built on people like Triple H, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, DX, the NWO. The NWO. I still walk around. If I see, as a grown-ass man, I can say today, I'm 40 years old. I will walk around. If I see someone with an NWO shirt on, I'll hit him with the too sweet. Because you know, once you're NWO for life. At this day and age, I don't even know who's in NWO and who's not even in NWO no more. I don't know. But so for me, I fell out of love with wrestling. When I mean I fell out of love with wrestling, I became to an age to where there was more interesting things than pro wrestling. Some of you boys and girls that may be watching may understand. I found girls interesting. It was way more interesting. Don't get it wrong. Girls still liked wrestling, but it was a lot more fun. God, I'm trying to make this as PG as possible. My mother might be watching. It was more fun to be with a girl, because there was no woman. I was only a boy back then. It was more fun to be with a girl than it was to be with guys talking about pro. It wasn't my thing. If that's your thing, whichever way you look at it, and that's your thing, that's okay. But for me, that's how I fell out of love with wrestling. You know, I still play the wrestling games from time to time, but there's a time in my life that I couldn't tell you about pro wrestling. I remember I have two friends that are like, that I've had friends that we've been friends for maybe 30 years. And I remember sitting in one of my friend, Nick, in his room. It was me, him, and Greg, and we were all sitting on the bed just hanging out, right? Just lounge around the room. And I'm the oldest one. I'm the oldest one in the group, the first one in the group to hit 40. And they were telling me that there's no money in pro wrestling. And I recanted a line from a classic episode, or at least classic to me, episode of The Cosby Show, where Heathcliff, Bill Cosby, Huxtable, was trying to tell Theo what life was like. And Theo said that he doesn't care because he's going to eat bologna sandwiches. And then he took the money out of his dad's hand. And then his dad said, well, you want to have a girlfriend? And Theo said, yep. And then Bill took all the money out of his hand and he laughed. And everybody laughed. When they told me that there's no money in wrestling, I told them I don't care. I knew from before I was 18 years old that I wanted to be a pro wrestler. People wrestled in backyards. Growing up in New York City, you didn't have a backyard. Okay, your backyard is where they kept the garbage. Where did we wrestle? We wrestled in the parks. I used to go around and wrestle with other people in the park like it was cool. Like it was something to do. It's what we did. We had wrestling matches in the parks. We would go from park to park and we would challenge other people and we'd wrestle and have wrestling matches. Look, I don't recommend for you to wrestle anywhere that is not a pro wrestling ring. I don't recommend it at all. Don't wrestle unless you are trained. It is dangerous. Look at what happened with Roger Jackson. That's another episode. Did that one already. Go look at that after this. But we moved to Florida. And when I moved to Florida, all I did was work, and I was dating this girl at the time, both 18. And then I fell out of love with wrestling. I wasn't even able to watch wrestling because we decided that we wanted to be a little bit bougie, and we wanted to have satellite. So we had a DirecTV, and for some strange reason, every day when the sun would come up, it wouldn't work. So it would be out literally the whole day until maybe like the night. Couldn't record anything, none of that stuff. It was a waste of money. The day that we were able to cut it off, we cut it off with no problem. But I wasn't able to watch wrestling for like a good 2-3 years. I remember working at Universal Orlando. And this guy, the guy from in the green shirt at the Victory Road pay-per-view where Elix Skipper is walking on the cage, you see me standing next to a guy in a green shirt. You can't miss it. Look for the green shirt guy. I'm in front of him in a white shirt. He's the guy that comes to me and says to me, hey, I heard you like wrestling. We work together. I said, yeah, I liked wrestling. He goes, well, do you want to come and watch wrestling with me today? And I go, I got things to do after work. He goes, what you got to do after work? I don't know. He goes, all right, come watch the wrestling. I said, all right, fine, no problem. I said, I worked till 7 o'clock. He goes, perfect. It's at the sound stages in Universal, and it starts at 7 o'clock. He goes, you got plenty enough time to get there. By the time I got change and everything like that, it's probably like 10 minutes. Fine. So I said, fine. I came up with every excuse in the book. I said, bro, I don't have any money. He said to me, it's free. All right, well, you can't be free, right? I didn't have any more excuses, so I went. And the night that I went was the night that Macho Man made his debut. That was the moment that I was hooked. The next night, I asked him if he wanted to go to watch the Impact tapings of TNA, and he said no because he had stuff to do. I didn't try to talk him out of it. I was too excited that when I was done, I would run to the soundstage myself. I used to go to the soundstage because I had VIP access backstage because I worked at Universal, so I can walk in between the sound stages with no problem because I had credentials to be there. And I would always see the wrestlers. And I remember one time seeing Devon Dudley, and I was like so nervous, and I talked to him, and I was like, hey, what's it like, and whatever. He didn't really give me much, but I knew it was something that I wanted to do. I was hooked like a crackhead to pro wrestling, I'm telling you. It was even so worse that I would go across the street to the Orlando Ale House to where the wrestlers would hang out because I want to talk to them. I remember talking to Elix Skipper. Elix Skipper, I talked to you. And you were a part of the one, you told me that you lived in, Atlanta at the time. And, you were telling me a little bit about the wrestling. But, you gave me the time. You gave me the time. You guys are, TNA is the reason why I'm sitting here in front of you today. The first wrestling school I want to go to, I can't remember who. It was John Tenta. I want to go to John Tenta's pro wrestling school in Florida. Whatever happened, I couldn't, that didn't work. And I eventually, saw that Devon Dudley was associated with a school in downtown Orlando, and that's the school that I tried to go to. I emailed him at that email address and never heard anything back. Essentially, I saw on the dirt sheets, right, on WrestleZone.com, and I still go there. This is not a plug for them in any way. I went there and saw that Bubba and Devon were opening a school, maybe about, I'm trying to do the math in my head, maybe about 10 minutes from Disney World. I only lived about 30 minutes from Disney World. That's perfect. It's only right down I-4. So I filled out all the information. I went to the wrestling school, and I haven't looked back since. When I'm talking to you now, should I be in the WWE? 100%. There's no reason I couldn't be in the WWE. But you know what? I never had any confidence in myself. Which is why when I talk to people today about podcasting, about wrestling, about being a rocket scientist, about being a person that cures cancer, if that's what you want to do, I give you the confidence to do that. Because I didn't have the confidence to do it myself. When I was supposed to apply myself, I didn't apply myself. But I ended up moving to New York, back to New York, and I needed something to do, and I had all this money saved up, so I went back into wrestling school, and that's when I learned from Nunzio. I remember one of the things, the biggest lessons that I learned from Bubba Ray Dudley and Devon. Because of my work schedule, they wanted me to come to the advanced class. Bubba taught the beginner class, and Devon taught the advanced. Bubba taught the beginners, and Devon taught the advanced class. And one of the things that I always think about now, thinking about it now in retrospect, hey, Fernando says that he also stays in Orlando, 5 minutes from Valencia College. I just saw, okay, so I used to live, when I first moved out of my mother's house, we lived in Pine Hills when we first moved to Florida. And then when I got a job at Universal, I got a job I moved out and never came back. I was working at the end of the 408. See, this is what I'm doing so I can let Fernando know that I lived in Orlando. At the end of the 408, there's a call center, and I worked in the singular call center that turned into AT&T. Then I got my apartment. I lived in Metro West. And then I working at Universal still because I wanted them free tickets. I eventually got a job working at the store on Colonial, and then I went to Kirkman. On Kirkman Drive, the wrestlers would come in to the AT&T store to pay their bills or whatever, and I always made sure they got VIP access because Shaq would come in there. Whenever Shaq would come in or any other basketball players would come in there, I'd always make sure that they get their VIP, but what about my wrestlers too? So yeah, I eventually lived on Kirkman. Where did I live on Kirkman? I lived on, oh my God, I can't remember. Wherever it is, because you say you live on Valencia. I'm assuming that you live on the west side. So whatever it is, it's where the Chick-fil-A is going down to Conroy. I lived on Conroy. That's where I lived. Don't tell people where you live in the chat, Fernando. I don't want anybody to knock on your door. But Fernando's a Florida boy too. That's why I like doing episodes like this, because we all find out that we have a connection. But going back to the story, thanks, Fernando, for your comment. Going back to the story of me being in the advanced class, Bubba said, you know what, kid, come back later on for the advanced class. And me looking at it now, maybe they saw something in me. When you listen to Bubba Ray Dudley, Bully Ray on Sirius XM, the person who he is there is the person who he is in real life. I'm going to be honest about Bully Ray. He's a nice guy. Sorry if I said it, if I blew your gimmick. He's a nice guy, but he's big on respect in the pro wrestling business. As long as you give him respect, and the respect that he's earned, he deserves it. As long as you give Bully Ray, Bubba Ray Dudley, his respect, he's a nice guy. Me now, I went to the advanced class, but I said, you know what, let me go eat some Chipotle for lunch. Because I was in shape. I was working out. I was in shape. Chipotle was healthy to eat. There wasn't a lot of fat in it. A lot of protein. I got me the hot sauce, the hot salsa, and I was running the ropes in the ring in the advanced class. Running the ropes is when you run back and forth, and I was doing drills, and I felt the lava in my stomach starting to come up to the top. And then Devon, then Bubba used to always sit in the office, and he'd come out of the office and he'd just watch. Let me tell you something. He's an intimidating guy. Shoulders are broader than mine. He's got maybe about 2-3 inches on top of me in height. Like, and they don't call him Calfzilla because they run out of names, right? The guy's chiseled. And what happened was that I stopped running, and Devon goes, "What's wrong?" I said, "I feel like I'm going to throw up." And Bubba looks at Devon, and Devon looks at Bubba, and Bubba goes, "Well, run." I said, "I'm going to throw up." And Devon goes, "Run." So I start running the ropes back and forth. And Bubba says, "Run the ropes till you throw up." So I start running. And then I stop because I feel the vomit coming up. And then Devon says, "Didn't that man tell you to run?" So I kept running. And Bubba says, "You better not vomit in my ring." I vomited. I vomited standing in that ring. But I can tell you where it didn't go. It didn't cross my lips. I swallowed that bitch back and I kept running. That's one of the lessons. That's one of the lessons that I learned from Bubba and Devon, that, you know what? There's a thing in your mind that your mind always wants, and I learned this as well too. This phrase I'm taking is from our trainer at Team 3D Academy. He was one of the original trainers or creators for the American Gladiators. When your body says no, you have to make your mind say go. And that's what I learned in that moment. I wanted to quit at that moment. And I wish I was able to talk to 21, 22-year-old me and say, bro, like, utilize that moment and build upon that moment, and you can be where you wanted to be. But when my body said no, my mind said, all right, body, no problem. But in that one moment, I learned to break through a mental barrier. And for those of you paying attention at home, vomit does not taste good. But one of the first things that I had to do when I got into that pro wrestling school was I had to touch the ring. I had to see what it felt like. Going into my first pro wrestling school, being honest with you, Pro wrestling takes place in a pro wrestling ring if you've never seen pro wrestling before. For me, I didn't get inside the ring until maybe about 2 weeks later. The first week, I learned how to lock up on the outside of the ring while everybody else was wrestling on the inside. I was so badly, I just wanted to get inside the ring. I paid money to go to wrestling school, and I'm standing outside the ring while everybody's wrestling. The second week, when everybody was taking a break, my job now was to learn to get in and get out of the ring. That was my job, get in and get out. Still couldn't even walk to the middle. Then eventually one day it was me and Bubba. He goes, "You want to learn how to take a bump?" Yeah. And I took a bump. I never forget one day sitting down with Bubba, right, in his office. And I think it was time to, to pay him some money. And Bubba says to me, "Are you a mark?" I said, "Nah, I'm not a mark." And he looks at me. He goes, "I think you're a mark." And I'm like, "Nah, I'm not a mark." You guys want to know the real answer to the question?
Yeah.
I was a mark, I'm not going to lie. Being a mark was something derogatory. You didn't want to be a mark among the men, right? Unless your name was Mark. It was an insult for a wrestler to be called a mark. But being in my 40-year-old mind now, I would have looked him dead in his eyes and I would have answered the question honestly. Yeah, I'm a mark. I think the biggest marks of the people in the pro wrestling ring, don't let anybody fool you. Don't let anybody bamboozle you. Do not get fooled by what you're seeing. The biggest fans of pro wrestling are the people that are in the ring. It's not fun to throw yourself down and pick yourself back up and get thrown through tables, get hit with chairs. None of that is fun. At the base level of that, none of that is fun. But let me tell you what's fun. The fun part of pro wrestling is suspending the disbelief. The fun part of pro wrestling is having the people cheer for you. Having the people, listen to the people boil in the audience. Having the people react to your moves, whether they're cheering you or booing you. Reacting to the story, reacting to you. For me, I think that's addictive. For me, what's also addictive is hanging out with my brethren in the locker room, my sisters in the locker room. Wrestling got so big in the 2000s, it definitely inspired me to get in there myself. 2000 said goodbye to an era of blood and beer. When I first got my first match, right, I had my first match. When you watch the movie The Wrestler, the very first scene in the movie The Wrestler, that's where I had my first match ever. Years after that, though. And one of the things that I've never done, it's common knowledge that if you're going to bleed in the ring, you cut yourself. One thing I never did was I never cut myself. I never bled by blading in pro wrestling. Why? Because I saw John Cena on the TV. John Cena made millions of dollars and he never had to really bleed at a certain time. Maybe if I came along in the pro wrestling business 5 years earlier, yeah. But I've never bladed. I know the concept of how to blade, but I've never bladed. Would I want to do it? No. I think it might hurt. Ain't gonna lie. But if it was a part of the story that I needed to, I would do it. But I never had to bleed. But it was in the end of 2000s. It was like hello to hustle, loyalty, and respect. Randy Orton became the Viper. John Cena became the champ. And Batista went on to be a Marvel superhero. I didn't watch wrestling anymore in the late 2000s, right? Mid 2000s, late 2000s. I bought my own boots and I started lacing them up. And that's the reason why I get to sit here with you today. Fernando says that Mexican salsa ain't no joke.
Yeah.
It was no joke. I learned my lesson from dealing with that Mexican chipotle salsa. Don't eat the spicy stuff. In the 2000s, that's when I hit my 30s. And in my 30s, you got to see some of the Pipebomb as well too in the 2010s. You got to see the rise of the Shield, Dan Bryan, the Yes Movement, the indie boom. Independent wrestling became so popular that it blew up into AEW. AEW filled a void. I remember wrestling, and the only two places that you ever could go was WWE or TNA. Was I interested in going to TNA? No. But I wanted to go. Let me tell you how my no-confidence brain worked. My no-confidence brain said, well, maybe you can go to TNA and raise up your star value, and then WWE will come looking for you. No. Stupid. Why don't you just go for WWE altogether? Shoot for the stars. And if you fall, at least you'll hit the clouds. I could talk to myself like that now. I wish I talked to myself like that earlier. I wish I had somebody to talk to me like that. Like, no, just shoot for the top. Shoot for the top. Wrestling had become so global and so mainstream, it gave me the line to launch this, the Tristen Law Show. You know how this show started? I remember going to broadcasting school. So growing up in the Bronx, right? I grew up in the hood. I ain't gonna lie. I grew up in the hood. The same exact neighborhood where Tupac, if you look at that iconic picture of Tupac holding the boombox, that was on Walton Avenue between 182nd and 183rd. I grew up there well after Tupac. And the thing for me was that because of the neighborhood that I grew up, they had different programs to save us from going to jail and stuff like that. And one of them was they brought us to Hofstra University in Long Island. And I remember going to see the radio studio, and I thought that was so cool. A lot of things in life that I've wanted to do, I've done it, right? I wanted to be a firefighter at one time, I've done that. I want to be a pro wrestler, I did that. I want to work on the radio, I eventually did that. And now I'm working in the new age of radio, which is podcasting. I started a podcast talking about politics. I wanted to talk about politics. I love discussing politics with educated people that are open-minded, that can see both sides of the table, not just their side of the table. And I started having a conversation with politics, and I was like, I don't like this too much. I don't want to do this anymore. And then I started doing a podcast with a family member, and that didn't work out too well. And then I started doing a podcast with a bunch of people that found me. They were doing a pro wrestling podcast. And I did the podcast. It was cool. I came in, and I was allowed to work with them, and we did some cool stuff that I still do today. One of them was live streaming. I was the one that said, well, instead of recording the podcast, let me just do it live so people can watch it live. For me, it's the interaction. I love interacting with the people. I love giving people like Fernando. I love giving people like Heel Vega the ability to interact with me and each other live. You're at a show. I'm sitting here on the stage, and you guys are sitting next to each other in the audience, and not only do you guys get to talk to each other, but you get to talk to me. I did the Tristen Law Show in 2020 because I couldn't work with people that I felt didn't have the same dream as me. My dream was to quit our regular jobs eventually and make podcasting be it. Pro wrestling podcasting was so good. He had a vision, I had a vision, and together it was killer. We had a good thing going, but he's a family man at the time. I didn't have any kids. So he had to take care of his family. I don't have any ill feeling towards him. I do wish there was things in it that I handled a lot better, talking to him, dealing with him when it comes to it. But it is what it is now. But I decided to start my own podcast during the pandemic. I interviewed all my friends, and then, the second season, I did a little bit of video, but it wasn't live. See, I went to broadcasting school. Season 3 was live because it helps with the anxiety. And season 4 is what we're in now. I love what I do. I love people like Fernando, like Universal, like Heel Vega, everybody that comes in and hangs out and just interacts during the whole entire thing. I love reading your comments, even when it's not live. Wrestling had become so global and mainstream that it gave me the lane to build this community with you. Don't get it wrong. I was doing this before a lot of you guys even showed up. I was doing this. I'm like, damn, nobody watched live. Depending on the topic, a lot of people jump in and watch live. And depending on the topic, a lot of people don't jump in and watch live. But looking at me compared to then and compared to now, there's a lot of people that are here. The amount of people that I have watching this or subscribe to this, it's a lot. There are people that believe in me to sit here and talk about pro wrestling. Because if you ask me, you and I don't love pro wrestling the same. I think I love pro wrestling a little bit more than you because I went into the ring and did it. I think I might be a bigger mark than you. Don't you ever for a second think that a pro wrestler is beneath you or anything, is above you or anything. Maybe we're beneath you. We're probably the super fans that went to go give somebody our hard-earned money. You know how many iPhones I had to sell in 07 to go give that money away to Bubba and Devon? That's what I did. What's one match from the 2010s you'd rewatch forever? Maybe it was, the WrestleMania with Kofi Kingston, Kofi Mania, at WrestleMania 35 in MetLife Stadium. I ain't gonna lie, I cried. But looking at wrestling in my 40s today, you got the Triple H era. Right now, you got WWE versus AEW. You got WWE running counter-programming, WrestlePalooza against AEW when they're doing All In. You got WWE on Netflix. That's not new. WWE used to have their home videos on Netflix. But now we got live pro wrestling on Netflix, and if you live outside the United States, you just have the whole kit and caboodle. In the past 40 years, pro wrestling has become more global than ever. Looking at this whole entire thing, in order for me to sit here today, I had to go through different stages. I had to go from fan to wrestler to podcaster. Tristen Law Show. I love wrestling. I love what I'm doing here. The goal is to blow this thing up so much that maybe I want to be recognized. I don't know. I don't know whether I want to be famous or I want to be wealthy. But I know what I want. I want to create a community where we're all hanging out here and we're all talking about wrestling. That's what we love. Becoming a fan, watching my grandfather, watching that wrestling in the room, watching people like The Undertaker, Hulk Hogan, growing up with having posters on my wall, having $5, my mother giving me $5 on a run down the store to the corner, to the gift shop on 183rd Street between Walton Avenue and Jerome in the Bronx, just to go buy a Stone Cold Steve Austin poster that somebody probably made in Photoshop so I can hang it on my wall. Getting the free, using quotations with free, magazines to cut them out and plaster them in my wall. You remember the 3-ring binders that used to have the plastic on the outside? They probably still come like that. I used to cut the WWF magazines and slide all the pictures in there. The young girls were sliding in Backstreet Boys. They were sliding in the Spice Girls. I was sliding in wrestlers into my 3-ring binder. Being a wrestler allowed me to look at being a fan a whole different way. I got the opportunity to befriend a lot of the people that we've watched on TV. I've been able to wrestle Jimmy Snuka, Superfly Jimmy Snuka. I've been able to wrestle Nikolai Volkov, Tito Santana, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, Rikishi. I've wrestled Damian Priest. I've wrestled QT Marshall, Tama Tonga, Tongaloa. I was there when they were in Team 3D Academy. I've been there, right? And those guys are doing their thing right now, and I don't grudge them. I'm happy that they were able to take the opportunity that they were got and they were able to run with it. The way that I sit easy with myself now, because I say I'm semi-retired, because there still might be an opportunity I get in the ring. But the way I look at it is that maybe my life's goal was to never make it to the WWE. Maybe my life's goal was to be a fan, was to go to broadcasting school, so I know just enough so that I could talk about you and I could be one of the biggest broadcasters, podcasters, YouTubers when it comes to pro wrestling. Because of how my mind is set up, I want us to all be holding hands, kumbaya, and talking about wrestling. One of the things that I know about wrestling is that you may not be able to agree on who should be in the White House. But one thing we could always agree on is that wrestling is a universal language. Whether you speak English or Spanish, Chinese or French, pro wrestling is that universal language. I want to take a time today to give a toast to not only me, but to the last 40 years of pro wrestling. Raise your glass, raise your water bottle, raise your phone, a protein shake, whatever it is that you're drinking, because here's my toast. I want to thank my mother. Because if it wasn't for my mother told me, and let me tell you the thing about being a parent. You got to be careful what you tell your kids because you never know what they remember. My mother told me, son, if you want to be the president of the United States, you can go ahead and be that. So what I want to be a pro wrestler, right? I done that. I want to be talking here on YouTube. I'm doing that. I want to thank my uncles. My uncle was the one that got the free cable box, and he was the one that was able to help us watch wrestling. The same one that told me that wrestling was fake, that I shouldn't be watching it. God rest his soul, such a great guy. You know, my other uncles for taking me places and giving me confidence to help grow up as a man. My father was a piece of shit, but I had those four guys, the fourth guy being my grandfather, to help guide me up, to grow me up. I want to thank Bubba Ray Dudley and Devon Dudley for taking the opportunity in my lives to help put me here. They were the ones that gave me the first opportunity. They didn't have to take me into their school. Because of their name, there were people beating down the door, I'm sure. But they gave me the first opportunity. I want to thank Eric Cooper, raising my glass to him. Because of him, I got the opportunity to when I moved to New York, he was the one that set me up in the school of BWO, where I became the champion, to where I traveled New Jersey a lot, where I befriended Nunzio and Richie Rotten to where they taught me. I want to thank Richie Rotten and Nunzio as well, too. Nunzio was the guy that gave me the confidence to go places outside of Jersey and go wrestle. Richie Rotten, for those late night conversations where we'd be sitting in the diner after wrestling school, we'd all have to work the next day. Richie worked a good job with the state of Jersey. And he would sit there with us in the diner for hours, just talking to us about business. Richie's not a guy that ever made it to the WWE. Richie's not a guy that you would even know. You may have never heard of him. And I hate the fact when people discount pro wrestling schools because of the person that they never made it. Everybody has something to offer. And what Richie offered me was a little bit of business acumen, how to conduct myself in the locker room, how to promote myself, how to market myself. Things that I still do today are because of the conversations in the Saddlebrook Diner in New Jersey. Who else am I thanking? I want to thank my friend Lewis. When I came into Walmart and I wanted to hide because I didn't want anybody to know that I was a manager before. I didn't want anybody to know that I knew anything about Walmart. And when there was another manager that hated me for whatever reason that he decided for the day and tried to turn my entire department against me, Lewis was the one that was always a friend that was true to me. That is the guy that I went to go watch SummerSlam with. You know, I want to thank anybody that's ever paid $1 to come watch me wrestle. In the last 40 years, wrestling has shaped me enough that I went to go to pro wrestling school, shaped you enough that you want to go watch independent pro wrestling schools, wrestling shows. Go watch indie wrestling. I say that because of this. When people would stop me in the street and say, hey, you're that wrestler Tristen Law. I used to work at Sam's Club. People would come in and go, hey, are you that wrestler Tristen Law? And I would say, yeah, that's me. That's me. And it's like, I'm humbled by that because you could have took $20 and did anything you want with it. You could have bought yourself something. And you know, in this economy, right now in 2025, $20 is a lot of money. A lot of money. It's a little bit, but it's a lot. If anybody got, hey, Universal is here. What's going on? Universal, we've been looking for you. $20 is a lot of money. And for anybody to spend their $20 on me, I'm humble. I remember wrestling in events. So I'm not going to name any names of the people. But I wrestled an event, and I was the main event, and the person I was wrestling said, all right, we're going to go out there and do 3 minutes. I don't think 3 minutes was appropriate because everybody waited all night to see us, and we're just going to give them 3 minutes? How about 10? How about 10? I want to thank all 520 subscribers I have here on the Tristen Law Show. You guys show up for me. Universal, Heel Vega, Fernando, Juju Butter, all y'all show up for me. Sometimes I have imposter syndrome. I don't feel that I am worthy enough for you to be sitting in front of you because I never made it to the WWE. I know people that are there. That's great. It's nice to know people that live in the penthouse, right, and be standing on the top floor. But y'all don't want to, I feel like y'all don't want to hang out with me. Y'all want to hang out with the people on the top floor. So whatever it is that I am doing that makes this special to you, the day that I stop doing this, let me know. I make myself super accessible to everybody that watches the Tristen Law Show. You could call me at the promo hotline. Call the promo, 973-826-0101, or you can send me an email directly at tristanlawshowmedia@gmail.com. You can find me on Threads at The Real Big Tris. Instagram, send me a message. Hey, I watched the show and, this is not what you do. Go back to what you do. Because I'm not a guy that runs around acting like I know everything. I want to continue to build an environment, and I try things. I'm not afraid to try. I try a lot of things on this channel just to see what works because I'm not entertaining me. If I was going to entertain me, I would go watch something else on YouTube. I'm here to entertain you, to give you something to be a part of. This was not only a 40-year celebration of pro wrestling. This was not only a 40th birthday celebration, because today's my 40th birthday. This was a thank you to all of you. This was the 500 subscriber episode that I promised that we were going to do. I want to take the time and I want to thank all of you guys for being here with me on the ride. And we are not done yet. Wait until we get to like 1,000 subscribers. 750 is the goal right now. Let's go back to the to the chat. Let's see what we got. Let's close this out. Fernando said, wait, I gotta go back up to the top. Universe says, happy birthday, Tristen. Juju Butter says, damn, I think my favorite memory was when Mankind won the title from The Rock on Raw and Stone Cold came out to help, and that pop was incredible. Let me tell you about that. Still sick. The thing about that was I was a flipper back and forth watching WCW Nitro and Raw. And when Eric Bischoff said, oh, well, you don't want to watch Raw because right now they got Mick Foley winning the WWF Championship. Oh, word? Let me go watch that. And it was pre-taped. I said, oh, word? Let me go ahead and watch that. Worst move they ever did. Fernando says, toast to wrestling. Thanks for the fantastic memories. 100%, man. I can't imagine living in a world without pro wrestling. A lot of people love baseball. A lot of people love football. A lot of people love soap operas like my mother. When Tristan Rogers died, which is who I got my name from, when Tristan Rogers died, I had to check on my mother. And I don't know what it's like to love anything, any fandom other than pro wrestling. I'm not a big Marvel head. I'm not a big DC head. But I tell you what the hell I am. I'm a big wrestling head. Universal said lots of good memories with wrestling. Yeah. We can sit around and think about wrestling, about how it's made us laugh and cry. How it's made us cheer and boo. I love wrestling. There's memories attached to wrestling for me. Juju Butter says, Fernando says the FBI was an excellent act in ECW. I actually got to wrestle Nunzio and Tony Mamaluke. They wrestled me in 2012, maybe 13. It's wrestling is one of those things I always say that wrestlers get better as they age. And I would have loved to go back and wrestle all those people that were better than me once I got better, but then they would still be better than me, so it wouldn't even matter, right? Juju Butter says, cheers to Lewis, or Lewis, however you spell his name. Heel Vega says, shout out to that Lewis guy. He sounds like a real one. Yeah, he's a good guy. Fernando says, Universal, will Brock Lesnar show up at Clash tomorrow night? In case you don't know, WWE Clash in Paris is tomorrow night, the 31st, and on Monday, I don't know what time I work yet, but on Monday, we're going to be having a reaction. We're going to have a reaction to where we're going to break it down, to where we're going to talk about it, and to where we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty of exactly what happened. So we always ask Universal because we believe Universal is an insider. We really don't know if Universal is or is not, but Universal has been right sometime. Maybe Universal's Triple H. I don't know, but I don't want to know. Keep the kayfabe. The day I meet Universal, I want you to have a mask on. I don't want to know who you are. Fernando says, nope, Universal says no shame to anyone in any job they do as long as you are honest. Yeah. For me, it was always about being honest. Honesty is my best thing, right? Honesty and integrity. It's about what you do when people are not watching. And for me, integrity is huge, huge. You always got to make sure you're a good person. Let's see. Oh, wait, the message flipped. It flipped. Juju Butter said, I'm about to make it 5:21 now. Universe said, glad to support you. Glad that you're here. Glad to give you something to do. Heel Vegas asking Universal a question. Maybe I can get Universal on the show one day and just have them wear a mask. I don't know if it's a male or a woman, so we just want to see them. Will Roman interfere at the Fatal 4-Way match at the Clash? Fernando says, I'm very glad I discovered you here on YouTube. See, that's the humbling messages that I get, man. I'm glad that you found me. I'm glad that we found each other. Because I don't know where you are at in your life, but if you are looking forward to entertainment, I hope I continue to bring you that. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that all of you guys are here. Universal says, Tristen, we appreciate you. Appreciate you too. Universal says to Hill Vega, no, there will be no interference. It's not planned right now. Hill Vega said, Tristen, your grind is inspirational. I subscribed to you when you had first started. I was in your 20th sub, and proud to see you above 500 makes me happy. Proud of your success. Happy birthday, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Universal says, any news on Heel Vegas asking Universal, is there any news on Stephanie Vaquer's opponent for the title? Universal says it will be announced on Raw. Clash is 2 p.m. tomorrow. So make sure that you set your alarms on your phone. If you are going to have Sunday dinner with your family, I want you to cancel that because Clash is at 2 p.m. tomorrow. You know what? How about you just put wrestling on the TV because wrestling is universal. And no, it really is. I'm not even trying to do a pun in the name. Fernando says that I share your content all the time. And you know what, Fernando? It's people like you that I appreciate you. Well, that was Wrestling Through the Decades. Today's my 40th birthday, and I'm going to go take a nap because I'm old now. Thank you so much for joining me on the Tristen Law Show. I'm going to see you on Monday. Then on Tuesday, I'm going to have an author here on the show, Dr. David L. Shabazz. We're talking about Black pro wrestlers. I'm Tristen Law. This is the Tristen Law Show. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Flashing red lights.